Hi folks, today we're going to talk about the defense of alibi as it applies in Alabama. First, what is an alibi? An alibi is a defense where a person says, I could not have committed the crime because I wasn't there. Either I wasn't there at the time or I was at a different location or something to that effect. But in essence, it's saying, I couldn't have done it, I wasn't there. A person who is accused of a crime doesn't have to establish, they don't have to prove their alibi, they just have to create a reasonable doubt. So if the jury is looking at the case going, he might have been somewhere else, we're not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he could have done it, then that alibi defense is successful. So a person doesn't have to put forth an affirmative defense, they don't have to establish beyond a reasonable doubt that they were somewhere else, they just have to create doubt in the state's case that they were there at the time. And if there's a reasonable doubt, then they win. The success of an alibi hinges on its credibility. The more credible an alibi is, the more likely it's going to succeed. So to talk about real life examples, if a person is in jail and they couldn't have committed the crime because they were in jail, well, prosecutors are going to look at that and they're likely to say, we're not prosecuting this case. This guy has a rock solid alibi. Years ago, I'm going to give you some examples from real cases. I had a case where a guy who was an identical twin, he was accused of rape. His alibi, and I was one of the prosecutors handling the case, but the alibi was, I couldn't have done it because I was in jail that night. Interestingly, in a case of identical twins, it's the one area where their DNA matches. Two people can have the same DNA if they're identical twins, and in this case, the fact that he was in jail at the time of the crime was actually a lucky break for him, because between the two brothers, it meant that the police knew, well, he couldn't have done it because we had him in jail. We had his fingerprints, all of that. So that fellow had a very solid alibi defense that protected him against the crime. Now, of course, there's others. I defended a robbery case once, and my guy had an alibi that was, I guess, what I would refer to as a semi-alibi. In other words, his defense was, I couldn't have committed the crime, I wasn't there at such and such time. The issue, and what the prosecutor raised, was, well, but could he have traveled to the crime scene? The times were close, but they weren't exact because people didn't know, gee, this happened at 7:02. It wasn't like that. It was like, it happened about 7 o'clock, and my guy was like, at around 7 o'clock, I was over here. What I did is I brought in a postal employee who had driven the distance from where my client said he was to where the robbery allegedly was, and the postal employee testified, you can't possibly get there within that time frame, therefore my guy couldn't have committed the crime. Thankfully, my client was acquitted of that. I've seen alibis as a prosecutor where I call it an alibi lie or an alibi, where people come in and test a lie as to the facts. In other words, some guy's accused of a crime. He says to his buddies, hey, let's all get together. You say I went to the movies and that, whatever, we went to see the Spider-Man flick and we were all there at 7 o'clock. Okay, buddies? Wink, nod. Well, of course, if that's a true thing, then people will be consistent on details. But when it's not true, most prosecutors recognize that the devil is in the details and you can trip people up, which is what I did in this case to show that these guys were not testifying, they were test-a-lying. So I asked I don't remember how many witnesses, let's say there was 3, but I asked each witness as they came basically identical or close to identical questions. So although they were all agreed about, hey, whatever, it was the 8 o'clock showing of Spider-Man, when I asked questions like, well, what was the accused wearing that night? First guy might have said a red shirt. Second witness, I say, what was the accused wearing? A blue shirt. A third, what was he wearing? It was a long sleeve striped pink and yellow shirt or whatever. And as they testified and as I asked them questions about specific things, it was pretty clear that they didn't have their story straight. So again, I might have asked the first witness, well, what did the defendant eat? Did he have popcorn? Oh, yeah, he had popcorn. Second witness, what did y'all eat? Oh, nobody got any food. Third witness, what did you eat? Well, I had a Snickers bar, but nobody else got anything. So when an alibi lacks credibility, of course, it's not successful. Look, I hope that nobody watching this video is in need of criminal help, but I recognize that you might be. And if you have a criminal charge or somebody you love is charged with a crime here in North Alabama and you want our help, just give us a call. The phone number's below. I hope you enjoyed these videos. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. If you want to be nice to me, hit the thumbs up button. And thanks for watching.